Oh, that's it. Okay, we good?
Yeah, I'll keep moving folks over as they come in if they are town staff.
Great, so calling to order the select board code of conduct subcommittee for June 27, 2023. So we got the code of conduct for community standard for municipal workplaces. You guys want to read through it? Have you read through it?
Yes.
Okay. What are you answering yes to?
Do we want to talk about why we're moving on to?
Yeah.
Community code of conduct and what that means exactly?
So this is the code of conduct that will be in municipal for town hall, Rosemary, other town places in which employees and visitors will understand exactly the rules of the game and how we're going to conduct ourselves. Just for reference, Beth Israel Deaconess has something like this too on the hospital as well. And so we're just going to go through this, vet it, see if the language works for us. So
And if I'm happy to share
Yes.
also that from a staff perspective, we have personnel policies that apply to town employees. The select board adopted a code of conduct that applies to your board, and I think there'll be some sharing of that to other boards if they're so inclined. But we do really feel like from a management perspective that we don't have something that really is for our community spaces, and situations do arise where we want to be able to talk about how somebody's behavior isn't what we want to see in our town buildings. And so to have a community standards document that exists that has been supported by the select board, it's kind of the goal of this meeting, so that we have an agreed upon, you know, what are our standards, and then that gives us a kind of a lever to be able to hold anyone to that, whoever they are in our town buildings. So that's kind of the goal from my perspective. And we invited a lot of staff to weigh in as well, because they're at the front desks.
Right.
Having interactions with folks every day.
Right.
So. I don't know if you need introductions. I don't know if you do.
It's fine, probably.
Yeah.
Sure, all right.
Katie King, Assistant Town Manager, Director of Operations.
Kevin Keane, Vice Chair of Select Board.
Heidi Farrell, Clerk, Select Board. Amy Hilson, Director of Communications and Community.
Joshua Lopez. Chrissy, Town Council.
Karis Lustig, Director of Public Works.
And on Zoom,
McDonald, Director of Health and Human Services.
Okay. All right, do you want to go through first paragraph, second, we'll just read through? I think the meat of it is together we pledged what you wanted to.
yeah, and for folks in the room, I couldn't put it.
Thanks. We are a community of residents, staff, patrons, and visitors committed to creating an environment of dignity and mutual respect in which every person feels welcome, safe, and valued. Works. Okay.
You can sit.
Okay.
Hi.
Do you want to introduce yourself?
Joe Prondak, Building Commissioner, New Dave Roach.
Oh. Welcome. Okay. Paragraph 2, we hold that this environment is vital to the effective, efficient, and equitable operation of government on behalf of the town of Needham and its residents. And we agree, as members of this community, to conduct ourselves in a manner that cultivates this environment through our words and actions at town facilities, events, and work sites. Together, we pledge to, and I assume if you guys want to jump in, we assume every person is acting good faith and with good intentions. Any thoughts, questions? Okay, we extend empathy to those facing a challenging situation or work task. Anything? Okay, we speak in a respectful tone at measured volume, in measured volume, and with appropriate language. Display patience with others and respect the value of their time. We show respect for all people, facilities, equipment, and property. We refrain from violent, threatening, lewd, harassing, intimidating, hostile, or offensive behavior or words. Any questions? Ms. Paxton Muster?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Should you feel another person is not upholding community standards, you may request to speak to a manager or supervisor at any time. This applies equally to residents, staff, patrons, and visitors. I get the employee part, I don't get the visitor part. But
Sure. So I guess a hypothetical would be if there were two non-employees in the building who are having an interaction and one of them feels like somebody's not upholding the community standards, who would they go to help enforce that?
okay,
It would be under this, that they would try to grab the department manager.
Because it's applied out to all town buildings, so you can imagine something like that happening at the library, where
The CAF.
people are making noise,
right,
whatever.
And I guess I'd just say, you know, while I would want everyone in the community to feel comfortable telling somebody that they're not comfortable with the interaction they're having, I feel a lot more comfortable having town staff actually try to hold somebody to
okay,
a document of behavior in a town building, because we can train our staff. How do we do that? How do we talk with folks? How do we,
okay,
without leaving it to the patron to have to navigate that if they might not have the skills to do it?
I would also think that if there's like a front level employee who's dealing with something, it empowers them to also go to their supervisor manager. As opposed to having them deal with the issue directly.
okay.
Great
Right.
example.
Okay, next paragraph, residents, patrons, or visitors who violate community standards may be asked to leave the town facility, event, or workspace in which they are present. Repeated or egregious violations of the code of conduct may result in restricted access to town facilities, events, or workspaces.
One thing I'll add is I have staff, and I'm sure Tim probably does as well, that ends up going to people's property or near people's property.
Okay,
And so that, not frequently, but once in a while can be a challenge when we're trying to get access to like a water meter, for example, or something like that. If we have the occupant of the home who might use derogatory language or something like that, how would we then deal with that under the code of conduct? Because it's not really stopping that person from going into a place, it's providing our worker a safe space to be able to access and do their work.
harassment.
Right. So I think that, I don't know how to phrase that exactly, but just figuring out how we could incorporate that into the policy.
Okay,
Yeah, and I guess, we talk about, well, I guess it does say websites. Talk about behavior at in town buildings, but you guys are everywhere. This would include our fields and our everything, right?
yeah,
Yeah, I think that would be the hope, although how we would notice people that it applied, we could think through that. I think Karis is raising a unique situation of us being on private
Private
property,
property, yeah.
in order to do our jobs.
But I mean, my work sites could be streets, sidewalk, that's all public way. Not necessarily, you can't restrict somebody from being able to access the entirety of the public way. So is there any other measure we can do to keep our staff insulated from those behaviors?
I have staff also.
Same
that
situation, yeah.
Goes out to private property, obviously, and can encounter unpleasant circumstances with property owners, residents, and what I've always told staff, and what we've always gone by, is that if you feel uncomfortable at a private residence, you're entitled to leave. So perhaps you could word that some way.
So I'm wondering some sort of like revoking service as opposed to simply just removal from our property, but like you wouldn't be providing the inspectional services, our staff would not be providing the meter
Yes.
change out services.
Right, and then typically, so if I had an inspector that went to the site and felt uncomfortable as a result of the behavior of the homeowner, I would say you can leave the site, come back, let me know. I would then call the homeowner and say, hey, we need to rearrange this another way. Sometimes going with two people is a better way.
right,
Down the road, so.
But ultimately that is the same as what we have here, right? Speaking, like that the staff can approach their supervisor to help them address the situation, whether inside of the building or, you know. outside.
But if we had something like you may be restricted, a person might have restricted access or
Denial of
Denial of
services. I don't know how else to
Except
put
in case of
that
the police.
more.
You know what, I think restricted access to town facilities or services. maybe,
Services, yeah.
Because I don't think we wanna like threaten denial of services. I mean, this isn't an enforceable.
I read it as more, I mean, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I read it as more aspirational.
Yeah.
than Punitive. It's a document that we can point to if we don't, if we think someone's acting out of line or outside of the scope of standards, we can point to it and say, this is what we expect of an interaction with a municipal employee. That's a little bit different than having it be fully enforceable in terms of being able to directly change the person's conduct. That's easier if it's in a town building, I think, than it is if it's on private property. But particularly if it's on private property, it's something we can point to request behavior change. Which is, I would want to think a little bit harder about whether, to what extent we could deny service, like a permit or a inspection or something like that.
Right, but
Well,
restricted access to service. It would be restricted access to service if we had to manipulate our town staff to deal with some kind of situation.
And I think one thing that's very, very good about the current draft is that all of the sort of enforcement type steps are couched in terms of may, which leaves room, I think, for evaluating each occurrence as it comes up.
And I guess I would add, we have some of this in place, but we can do more of documenting an SOP or standard operating procedure for managers and otherwise of it's hypothetical situations. I've worked with the chief, we've started drafting some of this of, we have very clear protocols if it's employee to employee, kind of a discrimination complaint process, but kind of fleshing out SOPs for how we would handle it and maybe just documenting some of those strategies sent to people, the levers that managers do have. Which I envision living outside of this document, but we can pair it with that.
Okay, I also kind of wonder, I mean, it is a strategy to walk away. And just, do we put in somehow, like you don't have to put up with abuse. You can sometimes, now you got to, now you're just discuss.
Behind the scenes, though, like Katie mentioned that there would be training included,
Okay,
presumably for
Yeah.
staff, how to de-escalate and then what to do if de-escalation.
So they would know
I think
that.
would live behind the scenes.
right, so staff would know
Walk-
that.
walking away is not.
Okay. Yeah, okay, and then final paragraph, oh, Melissa.
Well, I just want to add to what these folks said earlier, because in our case, in assessing, we do on-site inspections. But it's sort of the opposite, if we have to leave and can't complete it, then that may negatively affect them, because we don't have the information now that we were seeking to get to help them.
Right.
So if we're not there to complete it, it may be that there's some form of punishment in the sense that they don't get what they were trying to get.
Some natural consequences.
Yeah, and I know we've had to face the same kind of things, and maybe more than one person going, or depending on the situation, we may just say, not going that. We're not gonna subject ourselves to that, so we may not go back. But for the most part, we don't really find that sort of negative interaction tends to be fleeting for us. It tends to be just an emotional reaction to our presence being there. No one likes us there. So sometimes that, just that separation, even if it's for a few hours, sometimes is all it takes, so.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, and then staff who violate community standards may be subject to actions in accordance with relevant personnel policy. Finally, thank you for playing your part in upholding our community values.
No, Miles, who could not join us for this meeting, gets all the credit for this draft.
All right.
And I just, the first line, together we pledge to assume every person is acting in good faith and good intentions. Boy, I wish that were feasible. It seems a little aspirational. I wonder if there's like a less descriptive way to say that. I mean, it's not a big deal. I think we get what it's saying here, and certainly would be my hope that people would approach it like this, but
Could you possibly just take out the assume and say together we pledge, not to assume, we pledge every person is acting in good faith. Instead of assuming it, I mean, you hope people are acting.
I mean, really, we want to give people the benefit of the doubt.
Right,
right.
It's the position you want to start from, so you want to start from a position that people are
Yeah.
acting
I don't know,
in
I
a
just, and I totally
kind
agree.
manner.
I don't know, I feel like.
Yeah.
That's a very
It's a strong-
Scott, it's a very.
It
strong
is.
lead.
It's also, I think it's often used phrase when you talk about in this field of like, assume everyone's starting in education, assume everyone's from, in good faith and good intentions. I read it also as visitors, like the town hall, assume that the people working are acting in good faith. Because I think we'll go with chip and, perhaps there's a chip on someone's shoulder. Okay. Any thoughts? Okay. Do we tweak? think
I
it's-
just had a thought of how to
I'm just
wordsmith
gonna
it and then I lost it.
All right.
I mean, if you all think it's fine, then it's fine, and I just.
I think the intention,
Typically,
we
I'm
all
very
understand and agree, but it's trying to figure out how to make it so that it's not.
What if it said therefore we?
Yeah, I mean, it just sounds like a self-help manual instead of a town document, that's all I mean.
One question that I had as I was reading it, and I don't know if this is directly responsive to your comment, but it says together we pledge. But it's a document that's really not targeting, but it's really directed at visitors to town hall and the library and other public buildings in town that are not necessarily party to this document itself. So I guess one thought that I had is to sort of replace we pledge with we request that all visitors, patrons, and people who are coming to town buildings adopt the following sort of codes of behavior. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Because we
Yeah.
can pledge on behalf of, we can all pledge on behalf of ourselves.
right. But if this is hanging on a wall, this is for visitors.
This is something we want to be able to point to.
We expect, we
Request.
request. Respect is a little,
I don't know if request is strong enough, but there's some, but
right, only there's like an editor here.
get to end that.
Okay.
I like the point you're getting at, Chris, and I think you can't divorce it from the top three. We are, we hold, we agree.
Right.
And so if we are a community with, dignity, mutual respect, and we are, then I don't want to pivot and say, I want to ask for these things. Like, I want to ask you to be a good person. Like, I don't want to ask you, I want you to pledge that you're gonna be,
Right.
frankly. It has no
How about
weight
respect?
to it, but we expect or we. I guess it's a shared commitment that they are creating that environment too.
Yes.
So we together will extend sympathy. Maybe we just say we will, we all will.
Yeah, we will. Just say we will. Bullet point, assume, we will assume, extend, speak, display, and show, and refrain. Right? It's showing, it's putting standards on the wall.
Yeah. I don't know if that makes it even stronger in the opposite direction you wanted it.
But it's not me, but
shall.
we will. we should, yeah, then that's
No, then-
aspirational, yeah.
I take Katie's point that the first sort of, the entire top of the document, including the first three, we will paragraphs are structured to, as if the document is speaking on behalf. So in that sense, I think pledge is apt. But again, it's just an editorial choice. I could go either way.
Okay,
So, can I ask a different question?
Sure.
Wordsmithing, choices. What training is included for at least staff?
So I'd say to some extent, feel free to chime in. Some of it varies by department, but over the years, a lot of it is customer service training. I think about these frontline interactions. And I don't know if other folks want to jump in on your experiences.
We've done training through a few different organizations on like how to handle difficult customers, which has sort of been like a whole list of different tactics to use to diffuse a situation. Probably have done it sort of more spotty with our field staff. Concentrated it more on the phone staff and the in the office staff. But they're, to be frank, the ones in the field are likely to be the ones who deal with it more than the ones in the office.
I would agree on both things. We've done it sort of sporadically with front desk staff, less so with field staff. We're going out and doing inspections.
I wonder if just de-escalation.
Yeah.
Customer service skills too, but de-escalation in particular, especially for those who maybe are encountering unpleasant situations on their own outside of the office. You know, department. That seems like a tough place to be.
okay.
Can I ask one question of the group? I think ideally if you two are end up recommending to the full select board that this is something you adopt and you suggest we put it in all kind of non-school town buildings. I guess my question is for folks that aren't in town hall, do you want questions regarding this to go to town hall, to come to the town manager, or do you want, say, a PSAP or somebody there to be the point of contact, or a PATH or the library RRC?
I think it'd be easier if it was in the building. Like if you
In
have someone
each
in the building, so, I can think of a handful of times we've had high conflict situations, and I think having somebody address it, because they're in the building, so short of calling the police department and escorting the person out of the building, usually someone is coming to get somebody with some authority to manage that situation. So I would think you'd want someone like deputized in each building.
Okay.
Or maybe multiple people to de-escalate.
I definitely agree. I mean, I feel like there are plenty of department managers at each site, but also that you want staff universally to feel responsible to back this up. So it would make sense. Keep it local each time. It'll eventually be the town manager anyway.
Yeah, but I think it's a good distinction, because I don't know that somebody is gonna call and just have kind of a philosophical question about this. I think they are gonna have an in the moment question about it.
You don't usually pull that out unless there's a reason to pull it out. If you're having if all the things are followed in that policy, you're never talking about you're never talking about the code of conduct.
Yes.
But this is gonna be posted. Invisible, yeah.
I actually had a question. What do we consider appropriate language? The reason I asked is, the situation that came up that Chris, I'm sure you're familiar with it in Southborough, the woman who made comments before, during the public commentary at the select board and was cut off and then said that her First Amendment rights were violated. So I just wanna, I don't know if we have any context or we can try to define that or at least put it out there to think about, but I'm curious what thoughts are on appropriate language.
think it's, to my mind, it's preferable to leave it a little bit open-ended
Okay,
and leave room for, reacting to each situation on its own, rather than trying to define it. I think the goal of this document is sort of pointed at some, a fact pattern that is different than the one in the Southborough case. The one in the Southborough case was, dealt with public speak section of the select board meeting, which is almost necessarily inviting political speech. And so the day-to-day interaction in town hall and the library piece out is, I think, likely to be a little bit different than that scenario, but even this document does sort of raise the First Amendment issues. So I think rather than try to sort of define what can happen and what can't in all buildings and all situations, better to leave it open and a little bit open-ended and leave room for reacting to each situation individually. So that we can decide. I mean, someone coming into town hall to complain about a political issue or a something government related could sort of have a heightened level of First Amendment protection than another interaction with an inspector out at a site. So I think, I've looked at the policy and I think it's acceptable, but I sort of think defining things more specifically could get us into more trouble.
so no
than
list of
leaving
bad
things
words or
open-ended.
That's not, I mean, they
But
can
then-
say whatever they want, really, if it's not aggressive,
Well,
hostile, threatening, the threatening violence.
so
And
the
I think-
last line though here,
I know, I saw that, yeah.
I mean, violent and threatening, sure, but lewd, harassing, intimidating, hostile, or offensive. Wide open, right?
Yeah,
So is that line a problem?
This document as currently drafted does not threaten any particular consequence. It just says that we may ask the person to leave the building. So I think it would be important rather than if the point person in any contact that arguably runs afoul of this policy thinks it does. I think it's a conversation. You point to the standard and say, we're asking you to abide by this policy. If it comes to the point of, throwing someone out of the building because they've, engaged in harassing or inflammatory language, we may need to put some thought, people may need to put some thought into whether we are, falling back to customer service and abide by the policy, or, calling the police to have them escorted out of the building. Because the latter could raise some First Amendment issues that we need to be thinking about at the time. I'm not sure that's a satisfactory answer in terms of saying what's going to happen in all cases, but I think understanding that there are First Amendment issues at stake here, or potentially at stake, and preserving the need to sort of figure things out as they come up is important in terms of how we apply this moving forward.
okay. It's a very gray area, it really is.
I think that speaks to maybe even more underscoring, giving staff and managers some strategies, because if it is a First Amendment issue, not just de-escalation strategies, but the answer might not be to ask the person to leave, but the answer might be your staff don't have to deal with that, and I'm happy to, right? That's,
Right.
tools that we have, so maybe it's more just making sure that all of our staff knows, like, you can escalate it up so that you're not the one taking that, and there are plenty of us that can take that. If it feels like it's a real gray area to ask somebody to leave. Yes, for me, that would be my priority at that point, that I would be the one handling that as opposed to somebody who's really feeling uncomfortable or.
That's one of the tactics we've used, is we've had to funnel an individual who was particularly aggressive, just through one party, right? So it was, this is the one party, because again, they're the person who can handle it, filter it, kind of distill the actual issue that needs to be resolved from the other noise, And so that was a tactic. The person still was heard, this person still expressed themselves, this person still reserved services, but we restricted who that person could communicate with in order to get those services, in order to manage the situation, and that person took that on. So that's a strategy we have definitely used in the past that's been successful, because usually what happens is that diffuses that person. They know that they can't get a rise out of someone and they'll kind of back off.
95% of the time, they just want to be heard. Once they get it off their chest, they're fine. You know, and if it's not working with somebody, you move up the ladder, they feel that they've gotten the response they want, and very, very few issues come to being escorted out of the building.
You know, just to your point, I found that if we escalate to a manager quicker in the interaction, that diffuses it
Mhm.
much. In other words, not to wait to the point where we have to call.
Yeah.
To say, you know, this is a little, needs more attention. Let me get somebody who can help you better.
Yeah.
And then. Okay.
Sounds like everyone's in agreement with this.
Yeah, just want to bounce this off. In the last bullet, refrain from violent, threatening. You want to say racist, or do we have to say that? And we agree.
Yeah, I think once you start, well, I think, you know, the fact that keeping it a little bit more vague is better.
Okay. Yeah, oh, gotcha. Okay.
I think for me, the line is usually if you ask someone to stop saying something and they keep doing it, that's kind of my line of like offensive or harassment. If someone swears and you don't like it and you say, please don't swear in front of me, and then they keep swearing in front of you, that's when it escalates it. So sometimes I think it's not the first time, sometimes it's like the second or the third time when you've asked somebody to stop so the word itself or the incident itself is not necessarily the issue, but it's the repeated behavior that would escalate it.
Right.
Well, what you might find offensive is still protected speech. I mean, that's some of it is too, and that's the biggest hurdle to get over, because we're used to it. They call us all kinds of things. A lot of people aren't, and just because they're swearing or yelling at you, it's not, you know, it's still protected, unfortunately, as long as it's not certain elements into, you know. That's the hardest part, I think, when you talk about training, is making sure that as part of the training, when you talk about this and de-escalation, diffusing situations, that you talk about the First Amendment and you talk about the parameters of it, and, you know, so they have a general idea that, and also that this is not enforceable because they swear you don't, doesn't mean they're gonna be kicked out of the building. So I think training at every building is important so that they have a good understanding of the basis or foundation of how to deal with it and what's right and what's wrong. Tim gets it a lot. He has people down for all the time.
I have very patient staff, though. I'm very fortunate
Yes.
and well-trained too.
So let's step three.
Yeah,
Guess in terms of edits, maybe we want to rework the first bullet under together we pledge, or
yeah, I think it sounds, I could see someone coming and saying, I didn't pledge to that at all. I'm like, what the hell are you talking? You know, what you're saying,
yeah,
and I think we can. Yes, but we pledged to, it is aspirational, but I think we,
You could even just together we.
together we, yeah. Together we.
yeah, sure.
Kevin, what is worth of that falls into being English nerd here?
Yeah.
Solemn promise, vow, you know, pledge, what he vows, seeking for office, and pledge of allegiance, it's a higher level of promise.
Right, okay. Thank you. Okay, and then are we good with we hold, and we agree?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. All right,
And then this paragraph that starts with residents, patrons, we were gonna add maybe services to the last sentence. may result in restricted access to facilities, event services, or workspaces.
Restricted or do you want delayed or? Yeah, it's restricted.
Limit restricted,
Limited,
I think restricted kind of,
broad.
yeah, I mean, I think it kind of says it's going to do all those things, but maybe restricted.
Okay,
Without. Going any further with it.
right, okay. And then finally, just 2 points. I know at the, on the back visual deacon, it says no guns and no video. Neither of those would be permissible in the entire building, right?
Video. It's a video.
Yeah. Well, photos, but no, they can, you can video.
They can video,
It's
yeah,
public
as
space.
long as they're not in your private workspace.
Yeah, okay.
And guns are. Allowed, I mean, really, the only place that they're not are certain federal buildings and schools.
Courts,
Yeah, I mean. Of course, federal buildings, whether, government buildings, some have limited access, but.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Any other thoughts? Do we need to meet again, or do we all think we're,
I think we're good, and if you both are comfortable as our members of our subcommittee, I can update this with the changes, and I think the hope is that you recommend it to the full select board and that the board would adopt it and suggest to staff that we put it in all the town buildings and we do some trainings around it.
okay? And you want to send it, if we do another draft, do you guys want to see by email one last time? Or just- Are you good?
I think that's pretty minimal change, right? Yeah.
All right, great.
Okay.
We're
I
good.
think you can make a motion to
If if only
adjourn.
there was a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
You're the only two voting members.
Oh, yes. All right, you're adjourned.
Thank you.